As I record this message, we're all still reeling from the destruction from the Los Angeles fires. And while I'm going to be talking about upcoming concerts, I'm sensitive to the fact that going to performances is the furthest thing from the minds of many. A tragedy of the Palisades blaze, Larry Schoenberg, Arnold's son, lost his home and the building that hosted the family's music production business. Over 100,000 scores, letters, photographs, and other memorabilia were destroyed. In light of this dreadful news, our upcoming performance of Pierrot Lunaire seems to assume a slightly different cast. We're honored to recognize the birthday of this master composer. This is loosely part of Schoenberg 150, the global celebration of the 150th anniversary of his birth. We also send our best wishes to Larry Schoenberg and the rest of the Los Angeles-based family. Many times learning about the background of a piece, when and how it was composed, is interesting, but not strictly necessary for listening to the music. In this case, however, some background will be critical to your reception of Pierrot Lunaire. Much is made of Schoenberg's music, too much perhaps. I could easily devote this whole piece to an analysis of the genius of the Pierrot score, but that's not why I'm here today. And Schoenberg himself was less interested in the mechanics of the form or the writing. He was primarily interested in expression, what the music was seeking to convey. Pierrot Lunaire, or by its full title, 3 × 7 poems from Albert Giraud's Pierrot Lunaire, is a musical setting of 21 poems. 21 different scenes or melodramas, lasting from mere seconds to about a maximum of 2.5 minutes. This is not a song cycle as you would think of by, say, Schubert, and while a structure exists, there isn't an overall narrative line. These are 21 individual scenes, highly atmospheric, at times bizarre, phantasmagorical, or grotesque, describing Pierrot drunk on moonlight as he loses his mind to a surreal darkness before recovery and return to his commedia dell'arte roots. These are not songs. These are melodramas. First, let's take a look at Pierrot. For today, we share very little awareness of this character, other than a somewhat detached notion of a sad clown. Pierrot was one of the stock characters of the commedia dell'arte, which had its origins in 16th century Italy and was popular across Europe for over 2 centuries. The original Pierrot was a buffoon, lovesick for the beautiful Columbine, who cruelly teased him and misled him while cavorting with the much more sinister Harlequin. These and the other characters of the commedia were well known to the public and influential across the arts. You can think of Charlie Chaplin as a Pierrot character. Moving beyond the early 20th century, these characters faded from the public consciousness. The end of the 19th century, though, was a period of particular enthusiasm, especially in Paris, where Pierrot was everywhere, inspiring performances by just about every major artistic figure. However, this Pierrot, no longer a buffoon, has transformed into a representation of a tortured artist. Lovesick, melancholy, a dissolute, sometimes violent clown. This is Schoenberg's Pierrot. How did Schoenberg portray his Pierrot? Most of the performances we know are quite sterile, hopefully technically proficient, but completely miss the melodramatic element. As I prepared the Camerata's interpretation, as I prepared to share it with you, it's critical that we examine Europe of that time. This is La Belle Époque, la fin du siècle. Man is convinced of his dominion over nature. Everything is changing. Everything. Literature, painting, visual arts, theater, psychoanalysis. This is the time of Freud and Jung. And music. In less than one lifetime, You would have heard the development from the Beethovenian lineage of Brahms and Schumann, the tectonic shift to Liszt, and the consuming chromaticism of Wagner. Now it's Debussy and Mahler. Stravinsky and Digilev's Rite of Spring is just around the corner. The level of creativity is off the charts. And the cultural zeitgeist now expects the unexpected all of the time. In our performance, Pierrot will be prefaced by a cabaret set. Schoenberg, self-taught as a composer, was well versed in popular music and the cabaret. The first cabaret was Le Chat Noir in 1880s Paris. In 1901, Ernst von Wolzogen introduced cabaret to Berlin with his Überbrettel, a literary cabaret. Ultimately, having to rely on vaudeville entertainment to sell tickets, the idea of a high-minded cabaret failed. But for a short time, Schoenberg was the music director of the Überbrettel. And this is where his Brettellieder, his cabaret songs, date from. In 1912, Albertina Zema, an actress and singer, commissioned Schoenberg to set poems by the Belgian symbolist poet Albert Giraud, in their German translation by Otto Erich Hartleben. A concept vital to our appreciation of Pierrot is that the symbolist sought not to depict a subject itself, rather the effect produced by that subject. Giraud had written 50 fantastical poems in his Pierrot Lunaire cycle, which took Hartleben 6 years to translate. He changed some of the text, quite substantially in some cases, and today scholars agree that Hartleben's translations are significantly superior to the original. Both Zema and Schoenberg were eager to create new musical expression. In particular, they shared the notion that the sound of a word, the sound of words, was as, if not more important to expression than the word's meaning. Schoenberg wasn't the first composer to explore this concept, but his Sprechstimme, or Sprechmelodia, was the result, a cross between recitation and singing, where the performer has considerable flexibility in use of pitch. Schoenberg first used this in the last movement of Gurrelieder and throughout Pierrot Lunaire. In his diary he wrote, "I feel that I am definitely approaching a new form of expression. The sounds directly become an animalistic, immediate expression of sensual and spiritual movements." Once the terms of the commission were completed, Schoenberg worked quickly, completing the composition in less than 4 months. Schoenberg, a triskaidekaphobic, was born on September 13th and died on July 13th. He was obsessed with numerology, part of the occultist tradition popular in Vienna of that time. He selected 21 of Giraud's poems and divided them into 3 groups of 7, hence the title, 3 times 7 poems. Each of the poems is composed of 13 lines, 3 stanzas of 4 lines, 4 lines, and 5. The first 2 lines are repeated at lines 7 and 8. The first line is repeated at the end. The opus number Schoenberg chose for this composition? 21. And while you won't be aware of it, this fascination with numerology is manifest throughout the composition. And finally, you remember the love triangle of Pierrot, Columbine, and Harlequin? In 1908, Schoenberg's wife, Matilda, ran off with his good friend, the painter Richard Gerstel. After 3 days, Matilda was persuaded to return home, but the affair continued. When ultimately it did end, Gerstel was so distraught, he committed suicide by stabbing and hanging himself. To summarize, in a time of unbounded creativity and change, Schoenberg is struggling to find his voice. He's moved on from the uber-romanticism of Verklärte or his Gurrelieder, but still has not yet arrived to his 12-tone compositions. Then he's presented with the utterly wild symbolist poetry of Albert Giraud, Pierrot Lunaire, which inspires one of the 20th century's masterpieces, which Schoenberg composes in less than 4 months. The ubiquitous Pierrot is popular across Europe in painting, dance, theatre, music and movies. This Pierrot, the tortured artist, is Arnold Schoenberg. Arnold Schoenberg, the struggling, misunderstood composer, is Pierrot. To the extent even his life reflects the tragic love triangle of Pierrot, Columbine, and Harlequin. This is the world of Schoenberg's Pierrot Lunaire. I don't believe a static, monochromatic concert performance reflects that world, nor do I believe that's what Schoenberg intended to express. In and of itself, the music is complex and fascinating to musicologists. But Pierrot is much, much more than that. And that's what we're intending to bring to life on the Camerata stages. From its cabaret roots, immersed in the occultism and numerology of turn-of-the-century Vienna, Schoenberg's Pierrot Lunaire is fantastic, beguiling, grotesque, humorous, and utterly amazing. And we've a crack team of musicians to bring it to life, including the amazing singer Sarah Maria's son. I've been waiting decades to present Pierrot Lunaire. It's the most complex production I've ever brought to the stage. I cannot wait to share it with you, and you really do not want to miss it.